Welcome to Dragon Tales, where dragons soar, swords clash, and secrets burn beneath the Iron Throne. If you're obsessed with Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon, and all the hidden lore of Westeros, then you're in the right place. Hit subscribe and ring that bell icon to join our growing brotherhood of fans, because in this channel, the watch never ends. In the A Song of Ice and Fire novels, the War of the Five Kings is one of the major storylines which the narrative revolves around. The name is first mentioned in the third novel. Shortly before Joffrey's wedding, Tyrion muses that the struggle that the maesters are calling the War of the Five Kings is all but at an end. In the TV series, it is first named in dialogue in Season 2's episode, A Man Without Honor, when Tywin Lannister says that people are calling it the War of Five Kings. Apparently, he was just speaking loosely, and the formal name is still the same in the TV continuity, because Joffrey later prominently refers to it as the War of the Five Kings during his wedding in Season 4 episode The Lion and the Rose. While it is popularly known as the War of the Five Kings, in the fourth novel, an archmaester named Benedict points out that this is somewhat inaccurate, as Balon openly declared himself king of the Iron Islands only slightly after Renly died, so there were never five kings actively fighting each other at one time. Nonetheless, the name has stuck, and it does still refer to the fact that five kings were involved. For the TV series, however, it might be somewhat accurate, depending on when Balon Greyjoy's secession of the Iron Islands officially began. Renly was killed at the beginning of the fifth episode of Season 2. Balon explains to Theon that he intends to make himself a king by force in the second episode of Season 2, but this isn't followed by a polite declaration. The Ironborn make a surprise attack against the North at the beginning of the sixth episode of Season 2, taking Torrhen's Square and Winterfell. Thus Balon briefly claimed the title of king while Renly was still alive, but the first the other factions knew about this was when Ironborn raiders were at their doorsteps, after Renly died. It is generally a four-sided war between the Lannisters, Starks, Baratheons, and Greyjoys. Renly's brief time as a claimant, controlling most of the armies of the Stormlands and the Reach, did affect the strategic position of the Lannisters, but he didn't set out to engage them on the battlefield. Instead, the Tyrells had cut off the Rose Road, effectively blockading resources and foodstuffs from reaching the capital, and Renly was content to sit back and let the Lannisters exhaust themselves against the Starks while he built up his own strength to overwhelming levels, at which point he intended to march directly on King's Landing. Also, while there are four sides, this does not include political machinations and large territories changing sides, i.e. the Vale of Arryn or Dorne, and particularly House Tyrell, which considerably tipped the balance of the war when they switched their allegiance to the Lannisters. Due to simple geography, of course, any one faction isn't actively fighting three others all the time, simply due to the fact that they are located on opposite coasts of the continent. The Greyjoys, off the west coast, and Stannis, off the east coast, aren't actively fighting each other while he's on Dragonstone. Stannis does nominally consider the North to be in rebellion against him, but in practice doesn't actively fight the North, because he's more concerned with retaking the capital city from the Lannisters. As seen in the TV series, the Starks do send peace overtures to the Baratheons, but Stannis refuses to allow the North to secede and take away vast territories, which he feels are rightfully his. While the Greyjoys aren't actively fighting Stannis, they are not on the side of the Starks or the Lannisters, and are truly looking out only for their own interests. The War of the Five Kings severely weakened the Iron Throne, specifically the Baratheon dynasty, which had, after Robert's death, essentially become a Lannister puppet. It was the largest civil war since the Dance of the Dragons, resembling the endless internal conflicts that the Seven Kingdoms used to face before Aegon's conquest unified the Seven Kingdoms into one realm under the rule of the Targaryen dynasty, which had been overthrown less than 2 decades before the War of the Five Kings in Robert's Rebellion. The war devastated the countryside of Westeros, leaving villages and towns burnt to the ground. Tens of thousands of small folk were killed in the conflict, and the bloody acts of war created great rift between the nobility and the commoners. Furthermore, for the first time since the Targaryen conquest of Westeros, the lineup of the great houses was dramatically shaken and altered. Tensions continued to remain between the great and noble families even after the war came to a formal close. Ultimately, these continued tensions would go on to impact the last war, which commenced only a couple years after the War of the Five Kings ended, as well as the Great War between the living and the army of the dead, controlled by the White Walkers, an ancient and long-forgotten enemy to all that lives in the world. Combatants. The King on the Iron Throne. Joffrey Baratheon is said to be the eldest son of King Robert. After Robert's death, Joffrey was crowned as the new king, and his mother was named Queen Regent in defiance of Robert's will. As Joffrey actually sat on the Iron Throne, however, he was referred to as the King on the Iron Throne. Joffrey was primarily backed by House Lannister, the lords of the Westerlands and the de facto controllers of the Iron Throne. After the Battle of the Blackwater, he was also supported by House Tyrell. He was later assassinated during the Purple Wedding in 301 AC, becoming the third of the five kings to die in the war. The King in the Narrow Sea. Stannis claimed the Iron Throne on the basis that he was the rightful heir to his late brother Robert, since Robert's 3 children were in fact fathered by Jaime. Though technically the rightful heir, Stannis found himself with little support due to his blunt nature and lack of charm and charisma. He did, however, have the support of Melisandre, who believed Stannis to be the prince that was promised, as well as his vassals sworn directly to Dragonstone. He was killed in the battle in the ice in 302 AC, becoming the fourth of the five kings to die in the war. The King in Highgarden. Renly laid claim to the Iron Throne just as his elder brother Stannis did, as well as his alleged nephew Joffrey. Although the youngest Baratheon brother, Renly believed that he would be a better king than Stannis, noting how the line of succession did not matter when Robert usurped the Iron Throne from Aerys to Targaryen during Robert's rebellion. Renly also had the backing of the vassals of the Stormlands, plus the wealthy House Tyrell and its vassals in the Reach. Assassinated on the orders of Stannis in 299 AC, he was the first of the five kings to die in the war. The King in the North. Robb did not lay claim to the Iron Throne. Instead, following his father's execution, he was declared the King in the North by his bannermen and proclaimed independence for the North and the Riverlands, constituting a revived Kingdom of the North. He was later betrayed and killed in the Red Wedding in 300 AC, becoming the second of the five